good overall.
Yeah.
I think leading up to the workshop, obviously that's coming up here in a couple of days, I always get chaotic and sort of anxious. So I think that's one of the funny things. Like I have a lot of friends who want to get into education and they're like, well, I feel nervous going into it. I'm like, yeah, you should. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be a point when I'm not anxious or nervous going into this because it means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like stage fright. So many Broadway performers still puke before shows. Sorry if you're sensitive out there. But it's one of those things. So I think I always want to over deliver. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. So right now I'm just feeling pressure, but it's nothing external. It's just internal. And it's sort of like trying to turn a piece of coal into a diamond. So I'm forever compressing myself into something more aspirationally.
I was just going to ask you what you thought that bourbon.
Oh, no, that's good too.
I think, no, I think what you're saying is because give a shit, right? And I think what I've noticed a lot since we kind of dive into the education immediately, there are so many people that are coming out, right? Not only because I think bookings are probably down across the board, so folks are trying to diversify. How do they do that? Well, you see a lot of gurus online saying you can sell this course or that course, and every agency in the world and the Kajabis and the Learn Worlds and whatnot are always selling stuff about how easy it is to create a course with AI and then just sell it, and then you're a millionaire overnight. And I think there's so much that you have to sift through with that. Once you find your collection of educators, then you have to figure out which are the ones that really resonate with you. Do they have any level of pedigree behind them? Do these sound like everybody else? What is it that they're doing? What are the gaps in my own education? Do I need what they're offering, or do I just want to go touch the magic and be at that workshop? Am I going to the workshop to learn anything? So I think people look at education, especially people that keep a student mindset and want to get better over and over. It's getting harder and harder to find trusted educators, right? Because if everybody's selling something for $49, then, it's easy to buy that and it's easy to dismiss it too. Yep. So I've always been of the type, well, I buy a ton of online courses that I rarely ever watch.
I have probably everything that's ever been made.
All of them.
All of them. Watch 1%. I've watched 1% of that all the way through.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You get distracted and you're just kind of like, all right, well, yep, that was 14 minutes of my life I'll never get back.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's why I come to workshops like this, because coming as a student to learn, I go to probably one, maybe two a year, and I'm not talking conferences and whatnot, but like actual workshop. And I haven't done one in a couple of years, I don't think. I was hot and heavy for a while, Parker, and did some work with Felix and kind of bounced around and saw a lot of different educators, but I've been kind of out of that space, and I feel it because I'm not producing work that stimulates me. And so whenever I feel that, I'm like, I need to get back in the classroom. I need to learn some things, or at least brush up on things that I've forgotten. Do you find that when people come into workshops, what do you see the intention as? Are they coming to learn? Are they coming to touch the magic? Are they coming to shoot in a studio like this and build a portfolio? What do you see? Because there's no right or wrong answer. Everybody's got their own reasons, but what are you seeing a lot of?
I think there's a big variety, like with all things. I think for this, in terms of like the workshop that I run, people tend to come because they want to reconnect to themselves and their art in a meaningful way. And I know that's a big vagary. But a lot of times people who are running businesses, often very successful businesses, and they're going through the motion. So they're doing headshots, corporate branding, commercial work, whatever that might be. So it's not to fulfilled, but there's a dissonance in terms of them actually feeling impassioned to pick up their cameras and to create, or for them in terms of creating work that's actually significant to them. So they're either not setting aside time for whatever reasons to create for themselves, or they are creating for themselves and they're feeling unfulfilled and disconnected from what they're creating. So, I mean, these workshops tend to be a sort of manic, chaotic mess of creative energy. And so people come in and they're challenged to do different things and try different things, and they're exposed to different types of individuals and so much diversity and inclusivity and ways of lighting and ways of styling and ways of building sets. So it's literally this overwhelming 2 days that I think is almost short-circuiting. but then it's almost planting the seed so that they could take that back and do something hopefully more substantial for themselves. And that's the way that I try to differentiate myself. There's so much work out there on how to do a single lighting setup, right? And you measure out a light from here to here, and if it's exactly 45 degrees, and you have a Rembrandt triangle, it's all very formulaic, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that there is merit in formula, or it's how to make your first 5K sale, 10K sale, how to be a six-figure photographer. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we have to make money, but I don't have any interest in teaching that. That's already an oversaturated marketplace. So I wanted to say, hey, like, let's get fucking weird. Let's fuck it up. Let's address what's challenging us. And obviously that's different for each individual. And let's come together as a community and say like, hey, ultimately we're all vying for the same thing. And that is we want to create powerful art that resonates with us and hopefully do some good in the world in that process, whether it's for the people in front of our lens or the people who are viewing our work, or ideally both of those things. But I think a lot of it's, very overly verbose response. People tend to come here because they want to reconnect with themselves. And in some cases, it's just because they want to hang out. There is that. Some people want to come and say, hey, like, I'm really there to go out for dinner and have a couple of tequila shots or whatever that might be. Some people come here simply because they know the type of diversity that I work with. We're going to work with 10 to 12 different models. So if you're trying to build your book, this is a great place to do it. Some people come here because they just want to spend time with me. When I don't know why anyone would want to do that. But
imagine.
yeah, it's terrible. But I think it varies. But ultimately, I think the tide that's sort of buying for everyone, including myself, is wanting to create from a place of individuality and authenticity and do so in a way that lifts people up in that process.
But are you seeing that message get across to students before they come in? Like, start thinking about these things. What does your art mean to you, right? Because you can give a lecture and an inspirational locker room talk and get people stoked about art, and then start shooting and they fall into the rhythm of just shooting in the studio without thinking about what they're trying to say or what they're trying to do. And I don't see a lot of that in the same way that there hasn't been too much talk in the past couple of years about the self-value side of life and the mental health side of things. But not to get too far afield, we can get into that. I think I've seen in the workshops that I've gone to, it's probably about a 50-50 split where you have people that are coming in that have their voice and want to figure out how to refine it, make it sharper. And then you have a lot of folks that come in that don't know, maybe exploring, maybe they're just kind of kicking the tires on this style or that stuff. Maybe they've never done fashion or never even worked with constant lights or strobes. And they're trying to figure out what they want. Both are valid. I just don't hear enough. It's easy to sell technique. It's easy to sell process and workflows. It's harder to sell thought, right? And so what I've seen you do really well, what I've seen Parker Pfister do really well, is focus on that mental side of what we do, right? And make sure that at least if you don't explore it fully, you have an understanding of why you're here and why you're doing the thing. Do you feel like that's pretty common across the education field, or do you feel it's pretty glossed over and let's just get to the techniques?
I feel like it's pretty glossed over here. I think inherently, if we're talking about the mental side of things, if we're talking about intentionality, if we're talking about purpose, if we're talking about voice, these are inherently intangible elements.
Right.
So if I'm teaching you how to use one light to achieve moody light, whatever you want to, these words are silly today because moody to you is not moody to me and vice versa. But if that's easy because I can say, hey, we take a 7-foot umbrella and we put it roughly in this position and you could jot it down in your notebook, or you can take photos of it and you're like, well, I have a new technique in my arsenal. Technique is simple to teach and it's straightforward. To delve into these other things like intentionality, like purpose, like place, like fulfillment, like voice, it's very murky territory because it's subjective. It's something that we can't physically hold in our hands. So we're sort of working in the ether with that. And I think it's a scary territory for a lot of people, and especially for educators. You would have to have done some serious self-work over a period of years or a lifetime to be able to, I think, effectively, I don't even think you could teach it, but guide people to some extent or act as a guidepost for people so that they can discover that for themselves. I don't think that's something I could give to you or anyone else who comes to a workshop. I just hope that I could point you in the right direction so you can unearth that for yourself. But generally speaking, I think that so much in the education industry tends to be fairly vapid. You know, we stay at the very surface of things and you learn some techniques and you're like, here's a new lighting style, and you go back and it's not yours. No one's really talking even about the intangible of how to see light. You know, and if we think about all of these workshops and sort of education things that I've seen coming out recently, right now there's this big push on constant light.
Right.
So it's, you know, how to shape constant light, the power of constant light. Well, it draws people over. You know, if you're letting...
We had a sun
yeah,
a couple of years.
being like the sun slopes, so there's no special considerations when you're using a constant light versus a strobe. You know, if you have equal power settings, and that's kind of curious to get into technically, but at equal power, you're going to get the same quality and caliber of light. But for me, I don't want to call it snake oil, but it's sort of a cheap money grab, because you are taking people who may already be very adept at working with strobes and telling them they now need to come to your class or buy your online tutorial to learn how to work with constant light, when in reality, it's much simpler than working with strobes. So you're taking a pseudo-complicated subject, making it very uncomplicated, and then repackaging it as essential knowledge of some sort, and that just comes across as very disingenuous to me.
So something that kind of you said in there got me thinking about, like, I never went to photography school. I never thought I'd ever be a photographer. Right. So I had no plan on doing it. So I have zero formal photography education outside of workshops, online, experiential over 12 years, just doing the thing. But I don't have a lot of that foundational, fundamental photographic knowledge that you used to have as a photographer. As the barriers to entry have dropped, as techniques have become much more approachable, gear is much more affordable, the barrier to entry to photography is pretty low, right? So what I'm seeing is people that are just not versed in fundamentals. Not saying that that's even their fault. It's just we've created an environment where if you just watch these few things, you can produce these beautiful images. And there's like a huge appeal in that, right? And that's what got me into photography. I was just like, I'd love to be able to do that. It must be a really nice camera. Little did I. So I think we're just forgetting that people have forgotten how to think critically about what it is they're working with, why they're working it, what the look they're trying to get. How do they accomplish that? What is the difference between strobe and constant? Other than one flashes and one's on, do people understand why it flashes at what power in comparison to this light? I just think we've forgotten to start at the beginning. And we're just kind of jumping into the middle of the movie, and we're teaching people how to jump in at the middle of the movie. And we're skipping all the stuff. Why do you even want to be here? I saw that out at TPM all the time. We were talking about this. At the Portrait Masters, and I'm working in this booth, and I'm trying to help people to the best of my ability. And, you know, everything there is set up so that you can come into this booth and get a beautiful picture with the lighting that's set up. If you know nothing about photography, you can come in, read the settings on the wall, use the trigger, get a beautifully exposed photo. Now your direction and all that stuff is up to you, but you can get a beautifully exposed photo. Well, I'd have folks walk up and they say, you know, okay, I'm ready. I'm like, all right, well, what are you going to do? Want to introduce yourself to the model, you know, talk and maybe figure something out? Right? And people were kind of taken back, not all of them, but I got people thinking about, well, what is it that you want to do? Do you want me to turn this up? Do you want to turn down? Do you want me to move it to the side? Do you want me to lower? What do you need? Well, why? That the settings are there. Well, what is the look that you want? And I think I'm probably oversimplifying, making a huge generalization, but I just don't feel like people are looking at their own art in that way, thinking about what it is that they want outside of a certain style. I want light and airy. I want contemporary. I want moody, right? But they're not thinking about why. What's the story?
Yeah, very much so. Well, and I think even with that, someone can use one of those parroting words like moody, but like, what does moody actually look like?
Right.
Is that shadows? Is that backlit? Is that this? Is that that? And I mean, one of the simplest ways I think to break this down is so often people will come to me at things like this workshop or at conferences and they'll take a photo and they'll show me the back of the camera and they're like, Jonny, what do you think? And like an armchair psychotherapist, I go, what do you think? And they go, well, it's pretty good. I'm like, well, pretty good isn't good or great. So what don't you like? Well, there's something about it I just don't like. I'm like, I get that. That's what we're trying to nail down. Well, I mean, what do you think about the highlights? The highlights are okay. What do you think about the shadows? They're too dark. All right, so the shadows are too dark. Now we have something that we can actively work with. And here are 3 different ways relative to the gear we have that we can lighten those shadows. And is it just the shadows or is it the whole scene? How does the background look? What else is there? Do we need to isolate the shadows or are we doing something more globally? And so if you don't have the ability to deconstruct your own work, even look at it and say, like, this is what I like or don't like, then you don't have the vocabulary to be able to even properly engage and learn it. And so I agree with you. The fundamental aspect of thing is so huge. And we do sort of throw people to the wolves and give them a tool set that allows them to do something in a very narrow range. And they realize they can do that and possibly monetize that. But then as soon as they err off that path, they're completely lost. They don't have a compass. They don't have any idea where they're at. They don't have any idea where they're headed. They don't even know where they want to be, let alone how to go that direction. And so that's a very frustrating, hopeless feeling. And I think as educators, it's beholden to us to, as much as I loathe the word, like empower people.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those buzzwords, or embolden them or equip them is probably better phrasing, with a foundational toolkit, with the vocabulary to allow them to communicate effectively visually. And people just don't have that language of, going back to it, seeing light, seeing shadow.
When we were doing the Artist Forge forever, Nicole York taught a whole week. We were in this, we were doing these 1-2 hour podcasts every day, and we would teach visual literacy. Just getting people exposed to looking at images in different ways. Yeah. And all right, let's not judge the image. Is it good or bad? What are we seeing? Yeah. Is there a story? What's in the foreground? What's in the background? What are the elements? How's the composition? How's the light? All of the parts of the image that a lot of times we just fly right by. Yeah. We don't even think about it because we're only focused on the lighting or the shadows, or, oh God, it's too dark. Look at that expression. That expression is everything. Yeah. We might be able to do something in post to get it closer without having to retake that shot. Look at the thing in totality, and are you seeing something that feels good to you? Yeah. And if it doesn't, all right, let's change it, right? But I think it's that visual literacy part where people they're inundated by what's on social media, right? The people that they follow, right? And they're seeing Jonny's style, or seeing Matt's style, or seeing somebody's style that they want to emulate. And so that's all they see, and they forget about their own spin on it and the why. Because if I'm not getting the same light as Jonny, then I'm not a good photographer. And it has absolutely nothing to do with that. And so it's interesting to me that I'm finding, now, again, no art school, no art history, right? I read books, I try to anyway, the words confuse me, but pictures are great. But, we were talking, on the same line, we were talking outside about Irving Penn, Peter Lindbergh, right? And looking at coffee table books, and you're looking through all this stuff and trying to get inspired and look at how they built this massive body of work. And most photographers that I talk to these days have a certain style, but I don't see them creating large-scale bodies of work over a period of time. They've got clients, they might do 1 or 2 creative shoots a year, something to that effect, but they're not incessantly shooting for the love of shooting, for creation's sake. And I see you doing that a lot, right? And I know it's kind of mixed between the jobs, but how important is building that body of work over time not for accolades or judgment, but just for your own creative journey. How important is that for you to just keep building it and keep building it? Or is there going to get to a point where you're like, I did enough of that? And I'm just,
I think it's essential.
Yeah.
I think that creative play is so essential, and the obsession that I think contextualizes it.
Yeah.
You know, people ask me a lot, like, especially when I first started out, I went from, as we all do, unknown to relatively known fairly quickly. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. People are like, well, how did you get from point A to point B? We'll just call them that, so rapidly. And I was like, fucking obsession.
Yeah.
Like, when you were sleeping, I was shooting. When you were awake, I was shooting. When I wasn't working and making money other ways, I was shooting. Literally, I put in more time in 1 year than most photographers will put in a decade. And that's how I advanced. There was no secret sauce. It's not because I'm talented or genetically gifted or...
I've said that many a time.
Yeah.
Said that a lot.
It would literally be time I invested over. And I think that what you just cited is really key too. This idea that someone has clients, they have a business, it's going well, and they create once or twice a year. Once or twice a year. Think about that. Like 1 or 2 shoots for yourself. How are you going to grow? And 9 times out of 10 for those people, which I think are the vast majority of people, in those 1 or 2 shoots, they're still not creating for themselves. They're going, well, this is going to be perfect for my next marketing campaign. This will appeal for 40 over 40. This is going to do this. This is going to do that. So it still has an endpoint. So it's not art for art's sake or creation for creation's sake, or they're in there trying to nail down a specific technique. And so there's an expectation that then precludes them from exploring. And so there's no evolution because there's no failure. And especially in Western society, I think we have such a negative connotation of this idea of failure. You say failure in a room full of any artist, but obviously I know photographers better than any others, and everyone cringes. You go failure and they turtle up. They go into their shells and they start shaking. They're calling their therapists. And it's ultimate. Like the only way that we fucking work by failing, we record it. You know, for any behind the pain, I'm just a crazy mess. And I got a great idea. We're going to do this. We're going to put the model in this. And we're going to put it in front of this backdrop. Or we're going to put this fucking light on it. And then I come out and I shoot 20 frames and I shoot 20 more. I'm like, that's a terrible fucking idea. This road. I paused it. I couldn't make this light. I couldn't bring the visual to light. Or my vision didn't manifest as I expected it to.
Right.
And I scrap it. I move on to the next thing. But that you can call that failure or experimentation, however you want to phrase that. That's how I get to the next place where I find what I love, where I find what resonates, and where I find something that feels. There's an intangible feel, and I think we've lost sight of that too. Human connection. You know, we're so focused on lighting, we're so focused on tonal cohesion, on textural cohesion, on set design, that we forget about connecting with the person in front of us. And I think even with me, a lot of people come and they're like, well, I just love your work. And I'm like, why? Well, you have really nice lighting. I'm like, a lot of people have really nice lighting. A lot of people have really nice set design. But I think what I infuse into my work is a genuine love and adoration and respect for whomever is in front of my lens. And that's an intangible thing where I don't think you coming to me, you don't necessarily want to know my lighting. You want to know what's that fourth dimension. What's that intangible element? And I can't teach you how to love a person. I can't teach you how to connect with them. I can't teach you to be genuinely interested with the person in front of you. And that's a skill that you can develop, but that goes back to sort of the soft skills and how everything that's taught is a hard skill because it's tangible. And ultimately what we do as portrait photographers or fashion photographers or editorial photographers is humanists. And so as soon as we lose sight of the humanity in our work becomes hollow. And so we can look at it and I could say, well, technically that's perfect Rembrandt lighting. And wow, your positioning is wonderful. And you have 3 triangles that are present in there. And look, the tip of their nose is just resting past the cheek. And relative to the grid, their head is in the upper rule of third. And I look at it and I'm like, well, the fucking photo makes me feel nothing. It is a technically masterful, altogether devoid of emotion photo. And it is not art. It is a photo. Yeah. If you're operating that way, you're a technician. And so I think it's beholden to us to create that body of work and fixate on it and obsess with it, because that's how, and then from regurgitation and saying something of some substance of value.
Well, that was the thing that I saw in that, the Lindbergh book that I was talking about with Shadow and Light. Mm-hmm. Is that the one? Shadow and Light? Yeah. And something about it. It's all black and whites of the, like Helen Mirren and Penelope Cruz, and completely devoid of makeup, sitting in an empty loft room, natural light, maybe one light somewhere, but it was the connection, not always in focus, It's not always the composition that you would think, but I can't imagine anyone these days saying, kind of fucked up that shoot, right? Because the stories that are being told by eyes, by this clear connection between the thought and the subject, make it so much more powerful than perfect execution every single time, right? So as I look for inspiration in all these books, and connection being my thing that I strive for anyway, I keep coming back to, again, why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I getting closer to my own vision, which I never thought of at the beginning of my photography career.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can even. It's like trying to conceptualize infinity. We're in a vast infinite universe that's ever expanding. We can say this, but to actually we cannot comprehend that. And so at the beginning of your journey, I don't think that we have the ability to even consider that in a genuine way. That only comes later on as we begin to step into our own, whatever that own might be.
I think that's a really important point, because a lot of folks that do get started, and because, like I was saying earlier, the barriers to enter are so low that you can jump into the game, make a bunch of money, and produce quality work in a really short period of time. There are people that do that and are going to laugh all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people in the middle that also care about the art and the business, and they're just a mess. And then there's the people that are just pure artists. They'll care about the business, and they just create for the act of creation because it's the obsession that they have to do.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to not know what you want. It's okay to not have visual literacy. You've got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
But I think as responsible citizens in the photography community, there needs to be more of that messaging.
Well, very much so.
More thought into the why rather than the how.
I think normalizing that is a big thing, and making that sort of essential part of these conversations is a big thing. And speaking to struggle, speaking to self-doubt, speaking to self-loathing. I think one of the craziest things that happens for me at some of these workshops, especially when I first started, I didn't know what to expect. And I went into it with my heart in the right place and my head in the right place, but no experience to judge anything on. And one of my favorite things was when people started coming up and they're like, holy shit, hearing you talk about self-doubt, watching you fuck up during a shoot, saying you leave a lens cap on or take a photo that was overexposed or literally throw a fucking tantrum because you couldn't get something right kicked over a mallet. Well, that will incredibly expensive. And so we avoid these things because people want to put out this polish and panache as if they walk into a room and the lights assemble like a fucking transformer, and they get this masterpiece of an image, and it is such a disservice to people who are at the earlier stages of their journey because it sets an expectation that cannot possibly be met. And so in this process, or I guess tendency toward perfection, we alienate people and we create a false sense of what it means to be successful.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things was getting into the room with people like you, getting into the room with people like Pratik and Felix and all of these other artists that I admired and even deified at points, and hearing them talk and then go, oh, my work sucks. And I was like, oh shit, this isn't I'm not broken. I'm broken. Well, the reason I'm feeling this way isn't because I'm broken. It's omnipresent. And it was a weird thing because it was liberating, but it was horrifying. Sure. Because in my mind, I'm like, well, when I'm at their level, I'm going to feel like I'm a god and nothing can touch me and hurt me. And so it was reassuring to know that they felt that way, but I was also like, oh, fuck, this isn't going to go away.
Right.
And as I sort of moved on, I realized it doesn't go away. We change how we relate to it. We change how we handle it. Now when I start getting that self-doubt, I'm like, hey, self-doubt, go fuck yourself. I'm about to go prove you wrong. And then I create something masterful. Whereas before I would have been like, hello, bourbon. Hello, ice cream. Hello, bathtub and toaster. Let's see where this night goes. And so it's been reformulated a bit, which I'm very grateful for.
Right.
But we just, there's not enough transparency. There's not enough honesty and openness about these things. And especially for mental health and well-being, to feel at the beginning of your stage like you're not moving forward and you're having this self-doubt and you don't know what you're doing and you're a loser because you don't know what you're fucking doing, that's awful. Versus going oh, wait, I don't know what I'm doing because how could I? Expecting myself to know when I don't know is silly. and other people are struggling, and everyone's trying to figure this shit out. And life as a whole kind of doesn't make sense. We're all doing our best. And we're like, oh, well, this is actually a good thing. Like this self-doubt that I'm feeling means that I'm trying and I'm working toward a thing. And so rather than being an impediment, it's actually sort of a guidepost saying like, hey, keep going because you're headed in the right direction. This is not even an evil, but a necessary element of getting to where you want to be, and just the process and being an artist.
I think, there's, it's funny, everything you're saying, I was like, stop attacking me. Stop attacking me. Because I think we're all there at the beginning, right? We all have all the self-doubt. I know that when I started photography, I didn't know what I was doing. I was going to the gun range with my camera and taking photos of me and my friends. That grew into commercial business and campaigns with large companies. I never set out to do any of that. So I was blissfully ignorant about everything. Not only the business, white balance. What's white balance? I don't know. I'm got this thing on auto and I'm just shooting and people like the pictures. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And that was freeing because I loved the work that I was creating. When I got into portraits and I started circulating in different groups and starting to find what I resonated with, and I saw the level of talent out there, it went from this blissful ignorance to, oh, I'm just ignorant. And now I feel bad about myself. And everything for the first few years of me shooting was trying to prove to other photographers that I was a good photographer, rather than caring about the craft, caring about the why, caring about how my art made me feel here. I was worried about what other people who don't give a shit about me were thinking about the work that I was putting on social media that they weren't seeing. So I was creating all these worlds in my mind about what a terrible photographer I was, when every day that I was shooting, I was getting a little bit better. So there does come that moment where you realize, oh, my gods, my idols have all the same, if not worse, self-confidence than me. So if they have it, well, then that makes them human. I'm human. We all go through this. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully produce what I love. It took a lot of pressure off once I started to remove people from idolatry and just place humanity and vulnerability on them. And I was like, oh, okay. So no matter what level you get to, there is part of that still nags at you.
Well, I think there's that element, and all of us can relate to this. It's both of us. I don't want to say all of us, but when you begin to stop seeing a parent as a parent and seeing them as a human being, and suddenly it's like you no longer hold the expectations about mom being a mom. You're like, oh, this is a woman who has her own struggles and her own processes, and in many ways is just doing her best, and that changes the dynamic instantaneously. And so I think it's a coming of age, really. Like we're coming of age as artists, and we begin to see things not as we imagine them or envision them or project onto them, but as they actually are. And that's a big stepping stone forward. But just to circle back to that state of ignorance and bliss is, when those two things are combined, it's wonderful, because we don't know it's wrong until we're told it's wrong. And it's amazing. It's children in preschool, and they're drawing fucking crabs with bare arms,
right?
And it's swiping at the sun, and it's this amazing thing of expression, and it's their offer to the world. And you have this little savant child who's going to be the next Picasso, and you're like, the sun's not green. And the kid's like, oh, I can only paint the sun yellow, and I don't paint outside the lines. And no, crabs don't have bare arms. And all of a sudden, this child starts being critical of what it is they're creating. And as they're creating, they start to think about it. It's no longer a flow state. They're no longer present in the moment. They're beginning to critically evaluate relative to external opinion what it is they are doing.
You're not creating anymore. You're manufacturing, right?
Exactly. So, you are creating to spec.
Right.
You now have a spec sheet, so you're a technician. You're not an artist or a creator anymore. There's nothing wrong with technicians. We need them. The world runs on technicians. But we have moved out of the creative realm into something that is blueprints. And we have to break out of that blueprint status. Now, don't get me wrong, going back to business, if you have a headshot business and you use Peter Hurley's methods, and everyone's squinting and looking into 17 lights that are blasting light onto their face to make them look, 20 years younger and plastic. That's cool. I love you, Peter, but God. Anyway, then that's cool. That's your formula. That's your formula for business, but like you still need to feed your artistic side. And so we have to make these artistic dates with ourselves. Like, I will go in if I find myself in a rut, and I will challenge myself to do something that I will. We just had this conversation earlier when we were out eating about like focal length. And I'm the same way. I shoot with 35. I love fucking 35, 52. I'll go wider.
This is a
I just shot a music video and then a campaign for a big lighting company on a 14 to 24. And it's all fucking distorted and weird, and I love it. But I challenged myself very much like you did to shoot the 85 in one place. And I was like, oh, fuck, I love this in the right environment. But if I've been shooting with my 35, I'll go into a set, especially if it's my first work. And I'm like, I'm only going to use my 85. And that's my challenge. And even if I hate all the images, it gets me out of my rut. And it gets me thinking differently, and it gets me responding differently. It is so easy to fall into a space of apathy and indifference. And when we're apathetic and we're going through the motions, we are no longer present. If we're not present, we're not imbuing what we're creating with the potential power that we could be. And that's unfortunate for us. It's unfortunate for our clients, and it's unfortunate for the world, because we as artists are in a really curious and pivotal position to be able to positively impact the world and those we encounter. But in order to do that at full mass, we have to be at our best. And to be at our best, we have to be serving ourselves first and foremost. And that's not selfish. If we want to be selfless, we have to start there. And it's cliche, but it's so true.
No, we had this conversation, God, a long time ago. Probably several times. About having to take care of yourself first, right? And so I had a buddy of mine I worked with for years. His name's Kerry Davis. He owns Dark Angel Medical. He was a parajumper. He teaches people combat casualty care medicine now. So he's a trauma nurse.
Yeah.
So his big thing, especially when he was triaging in critical events, it was, you've got to be in good physical shape, good mental shape, hydrated. You've got to be able to take care of yourself first so that you can take care of others. Because if you deplete all of that constantly, then you're not going to be making the decisions that you need to make in a critical situation. Yep. And removing, like, pressing a button on a camera is not trauma care. I understand that, and I'm not equating the two.
No, I get it.
But all I'm saying is we put so much time and energy into others, into our businesses, into making sure that we're seen, being people that we're not, be acceptable, that yet to take care of ourselves, create for the act of creation, be that little kid again, have a little bit of ignorance and just wonder and curiosity. And we don't do that. And that is a form of self-care. I know that I neglect it constantly. I'm constantly neglecting my own creativity and my desire to make new things because, I got to send these emails. I got to talk to these clients. I've got to go to the studio and prep for my shoot tomorrow, or I've got to get these real estate photos done. Whatever it is, there's always something to take me away from carving out time for myself, whether that's meditation, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's just having a glass of water instead of another bottle of bourbon. Like, whatever it is, I often sacrifice my own health because I'm telling myself the story that I'm helping others.
And I was going to bring that up. Like, you get the nail on the head with that, so to sort of piggyback on it. I think most people, photography is curious in that obviously we work directly with people, portrait photographers. You have a painter, they may paint someone, but there's a lot of isolation. And so I think a lot of photographers who work with people, especially portrait photographers, we have caretaker archetypes. And what that means is that we prioritize others over ourselves. And a lot of that stems from childhood things. And this is not going to be a long enough episode. That could be another time we can all cry together and mourn, mommy, daddy, grandpa, whatever it is. But we take care of ourselves. And so there's a certain fulfillment in that. And so we wire our brains in a way where being a martyr equates with being a positive influence, equates with our value. The more I sacrifice of myself, the more valuable I am. If I wear myself down to skin and bone on your behalf, I'm doing something significant in the world. If I bypass you because I need that love, I'm being selfish, and it results in all of these negative things and connotations. So yeah, I mean, it's so vitally important. We can't, going back to it, even pragmatically, if any of you out there have not done personal work in a while, or, Matt, you haven't done personal work in a while, if you do that, no, I don't think that light painting with the flashlight is going to equate necessarily in more money for you.
Right.
I don't think the law firm in your part of the United States is going to come to you and say, hey, you want some reverse ES blurry light painting photos to show that we work in patent law, but we're different. I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do know will happen is when you go to take those traditional headshots, you're going to walk into that office with more pep in your step. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have more passion. You're going to have more enthusiasm. You're going to be more present. You're going to deliver a better service and product to them, and they're going to love you that much more for it. If you're just going through the motions, you step in. And I thought about that. I got to a place in my work where I loathed picking up my camera, and I went, fuck, there are better ways to make money than this. There are easier ways to make money in this. I do not want to be an artist who loathes creating art. That's such a terrible place to be in, and it's so hollowing and so diminishing. And you get to a place where you can feel so hopeless and helpless in that. So it's not optional. Creating work for ourselves is not optional. It's a must. Taking care of ourselves is a must. And even at these workshops, going back to it, I'm used to working in the fashion and editorial world. So for me, 16-hour days are nothing.
Right.
I'm fueled on coffee and cigarettes and whatever else, like it's the late 70s, early 80s, and I'm just going. I'm wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and at the end of the day, people are like, aren't you tired? I'm like, fuck no. This is what I do, but just that, like 8-hour days can take it a lot. So you do have to be physically sound. You do have to be mentally sound. You have to tend to yourself first, and this doesn't just apply to art, but to everything in life. There's so many of these adages that they come across as so cliche and trite, but they're said over and over for a reason. And literally, an empty cup cannot fill another. This isn't metaphysical. This is physics. If you have nothing to give, you can't give anything. And it's so easy to lose sight. It's so easy for me to take care of you. It's so hard for me to take care of Nick.
So how do you do it?
I journal, I get out into nature, I work out, I eat well, I cook for myself, I create my own art, I spend time with myself, and it changes day to day, and I go through seasons with that. And I think that's the thing too, is we're talking about how like formulaic lighting is sort of rubbish, and that you have to be able to see light shadow. The same thing goes for self-help.
Sure.
And that phrase is just fucked as well. But it's like, well, in order to be a healthy, well-adjusted individual, you have to meditate for 20 minutes every morning. If I meditated for 20 minutes every morning, I would cut off both of my feet and throw them out the fucking window. That is not for me. I love active meditation. If I go surfing, that's active meditation. If I'm down to editing, that to be active meditation. Working out for me, doing yoga or Pilates is active meditation. Like, there is no one right approach for any individual, and there is no approach that's everlasting. So what serves you today may not serve you tomorrow. And going back to evolving as an artist, I think that's an important thing to remember. Sometimes we feel very driven by a thing. Let's say it's blur. We go through the season of blur, and you're blurring up. There's flutter drag, and everything's not 1 second or 1/5 of a second. You're talking about how light blurs by and the impermanence of things, and everything's ephemeral, and we're all just shadows and temporarily manifest in flesh and bone, and you're fucking leaning into it, and you're reading poetry from the 16th century, and you're drinking port wine, and you're just fucking there. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, where's bullshit? I hate it. That's okay. That's good. Suddenly you're like, I got a macro lens, I aesthetic lens, I see every single pore in this person's fucking face. I can see their soul, but I'm here for the deep. I'm going to pixel peep, and that's my new thing. And that lasts for a week or a month or a year. But we just felt caught into this idea that we have to maintain, that we have to stay in the same lane. And especially if you jumped into this without being passionate. If it was a career change, or if you got into portraiture right away and someone's like, well, this is how you do it, this is how you do it right. And then you're like, well, this isn't good for me anymore, but you can't let go because it's part of your identity, your success, who you're known as, how you're known as. And we have to be able to molt to move into the next level, the next phase of who we are and where we want to be. And letting go is hard, but we have to let go to make space for the things that we want to be and become and achieve and accrue. And without that space, nothing can grow. Nothing can happen.
Do you feel like Do you feel like there's too much pressure to be a certain type or a certain look of creative, have them certain amount of followers or street cred?
Absolutely.
And if the world were devoid of that, you think there will be as many creatives in?
Absolutely not. No, I think people put too much pressure on it. One thing that I've talked about for a while now, doing things like this, is that I don't refer to myself as a photographer. I consider myself an artist.
Yeah.
You've
always said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I refer to myself as an artist, and my primary medium is photography. But no, I think that we have a tendency in this society, in a pressure, an imperative almost, to define ourselves. This is who I am. I'm a Libra with the rising sun. I'm a photographer who specializes in editorial portraiture with an airy feel.
Well, we're niching, right?
Yeah.
We're going to market it.
I'm a fashionista who likes blue right now. I'm all of these things. And so we turn ourselves into these arbitrary elements. And then that allows people to decide. I'm like, oh, wait, you're a denim guy? Oh, well, I'm a chino guy. We can't be friends. And so it allows us to decide quickly and erroneously if we're going to associate or not. But that pressure is on us always, and especially while always being seen. You look at someone else, well, it's successful, and I shot for the cover of Vogue, but I only have 5,000 followers, so I'm a piece of shit. It's crazy.
It's such a weird version of the primal caveman side of us just wanting to belong to the tribe. Just not wanting to get kicked out,
Absolutely.
right? Like I said earlier, like that's why I was trying to make my way in the photography world by impressing other photographers.
Yeah.
And it went nowhere. And it wasn't until I just said, well, this is totally the wrong approach. Like, I don't need to do that. That I actually started to feel really good about photography.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that comes with an acceptance of a certain level of isolation.
Absolutely.
Right. And in that, it took me a long time to find the strength to feel okay with that. That, the starving, lonely artist, right, is an archetype for a reason. But I think the lonely artist is less about how many people are in your social circle. It's how you feel disconnected from the rest of the tribe.
Yeah.
Right. By being out here, doing something bold, doing your own thing. And I use bold for the individual. Yeah. Right. And so I think there's always this part of us that wants so badly to be accepted and be proven viable and worthy. But at the same time, that feels false because what we really want to do is over here. Yeah. But if we do that, we'll be alone. And if we're alone, that's the scary, dark place. And it's just lighter and more comfy over here.
Well, I think that is a potential dark side of photographic communities. You get into something, and there are certain parameters in order to be involved. It's a group, it's a clique. Like you're not going to be in a yacht club without a yacht. And when you don't have a yacht anymore, guess what? You're no longer welcome in the yacht club. I don't know if that's true. I've never had a yacht or been in a yacht club, but that's how it works. Yeah, exactly. I'm out there on my fucking rubber.
I knew. You're inflatable.
Breaking shit.
Making a corn floater.
Oh, fuck. And the out. Right. Go. Bide and stay. But I think that's one of the things is we get into it and then we do feel that warm embrace, right? Yeah. Like I'm creating this type of work and people are saying they love it. They're being helpful and they accept me. And let's say it's a community that values soft, ethereal light.
Right.
Soft, wrapping light. Oh, it's so soft, so ethereal. It's so angelic. And all of a sudden you pop in and you're like, fucking high noon sun. You're like, look at the cheekbones on my subject, their structure, their fucking dimension. This shit is dope. And people are like, oh, you're one of those now? You're a hard light person?
Where's the white vignette?
Yeah, wow. Oh, that's not soft at all. Those transitions aren't buttery. I'm uncomfortable. And so in some cases, you will wind up finding yourself exiled from the community because you no longer fit into those parameters. And that
it's down to you whether you feel good or bad about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you got into something and it was predicated on feeling accepted, and that has fulfilled a void or a pain in you that's probably existed since childhood or adolescence, to step away from that, you're not just stepping away from that, you're stepping away from home. you're stepping away from love, and that can be a very hard thing to do. So it's so easy for us to become trapped and entrenched in these communities. And I'm not saying the communities are what the best still and that I'm typecasting them, but they are in terms of creativity. These communities tend to do one thing and they do it really well, but anything beyond that is out of their purview and it's in their periphery. And as you start to step into that, you have to step away from them necessarily to continue down that path. And so that goes back to molting, that goes back to letting go, that goes back to shedding, and the struggle of what it means to come into your own as an artist. And the struggle is fucking real. And I have talks with mentees and just random people who come up to me on the street. Oh, you're fucking Jonny Creative. I got a question for you. I'm like, oh, yay. I just wanted to go grocery shop. Help me provide some unsolicited life advice. They're like, how do I get to where I want to be? I'm like, it depends on how much you're willing to struggle. How much are you willing to struggle for your dream? And if you're willing to give and do anything, you'll get there. And if you're not, that's okay too. But you need to be honest with yourself about that. And that's a conversation that I don't think we have. It's okay to be a hobbyist. It's okay to do this part-time. It's okay to only pick up your camera once a month. But if you say arbitrarily, I want to be on the cover of Vogue Italia, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get there, you will fucking get there. But you're going to have to sacrifice a lot. You're going to have to give up a lot. You're going to have to do a lot. There's sleepless nights and fucked up relationships and isolation from friends and who God knows what else.
Not a whole lot of money in it.
Not as well, especially not now. There's no money in it anymore. Going down that road. But if that is your aspiration, if that's your life goal, your dream, then fucking give yourself to it. You know, it's the Bukowski quote, and I'll butcher it, but like, you know, find what you love and let it consume you. And so I think that I have that I try and have that open conversation with people to say, how important is this to you? Honestly. Mm-hmm. And people always, there's this tendency, we have to say, like, this is the most fucking important thing ever. Everything's the most important thing ever. I would give anything for photography. I'll give my hand, even though that means I can't shoot anymore. For this, you don't really need it. We say it because we feel that's what we should say, but it doesn't speak to the actuality or our genuine intention. And that's a big thing, like you had mentioned earlier, and circling back, that intentionality. Where do I really want to be? What do I want to say? What do I want to create?
And it ties into self-value, self-worth. What is it that I want?
Yeah.
Right? What is it that I want in life? Well, that's a big fucking question. And I'm not ready for that. So what do I want out of my photography? Let's pitch it down a little bit. I think, you know, as people start to play with that question, just opening up that river of curiosity gets you thinking in a way that is nothing but productive.
Great.
Right? And in figuring out, well, I said from the beginning, no weddings, no kids, no babies, no families, because I talked to all my other photographer friends. I was doing photojournalism and commercial work, and I realized, like, all my other photography friends were making bank, you know, weddings and all this stuff. And then you talk to them, and I'm like, you're 29 years old with a bad back, no knees, and you just leave the world.
Read Sylvia Plath in your free time, and
I was like, I absolutely don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
So I don't think people take the time to just be curious about what they want and what they don't want. And a lot of times, you know, and Sue Bryce has said this several times, it's easier to start with what you don't want. I don't want to do family, babies, kids, weddings. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So what does that leave me with?
Yeah.
Well, any type of art that I want to create, any type of photo that I want to create that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I just know that those specific genres are never going to make me feel good.
Yeah. Why invest time or effort into those things that have no reform? Yeah.
Right? Will I shoot someone's family? That sounded really weird. Will I? Depends on the day. Denver airport, man, that'll put the bug in you. So I think, you know, if someone asked me to photograph their family, I'd probably do it, knowing that I could get a well-exposed, well-composed photo, but I have no desire to get into that. And I know that intrinsically. I don't know, and this isn't saying like I've got all the answers, but I just don't think people are asking themselves that question enough up front. Look, am I a hobbyist, or do I want to go pro? Do I want to do fashion, or do I want to do abstract?
Yeah.
Well, whatever question you ask yourself, you'll get an answer to. So just start asking yourself questions.
Yep.
And I don't think that's being taught enough. I like, when I was at WPPI last year, sat through a lot of the lectures and walked around quite a bit. I was trying to get a feel for as many different presentations as I could get. And there weren't as many folks talking about the softer skills, the why, the intentionality of things, as much as I would have liked to have seen. Now, granted, I didn't see every presentation, so I probably could have missed 90% of them. I have no idea. But the point being, I think it's an important conversation to keep coming back.
Yeah.
Because it can change, like you said, it can change. I go from blur to light and airy to harsh shadows. Like, that's the great part of it. Because instead of saying, well, fuck blur, you're saying, I know how to do blur. I can pull that out anytime I and start to build your own thing with your own experiences. Right?
And I think that for me, at least, and I believe that this holds true for a lot of creatives, a lot of photographers, that my artistic journey, my photographic journey has paralleled my personal journey. And so hopefully we evolve. Like, I want to look at myself.
I'm not even going to ask.
I'm about to talk about mom, so yeah.
Yep. Oh, yep.
But it evolved. And honestly, okay, yeah, on the mother side of it. Hold on. Also didn't sound great. On the bit of mothers, I had a very challenging relationship with my mom. And so at first, it was interesting. When I first started getting into portraits and things like that, for whatever reason, people are very comfortable around me. I think if I have a superpower, it's putting people at ease. It's making people feel seen and heard. They feel like they can be whoever they are in that moment. And I love that. I adore that. Like, all the trauma that I have, that gives context to it, and I fucking love that. But I had a lot of women who would come to me and they're like, will you photograph me with my baby? This was my child. But fuck no. Not in a million years. And because I didn't want to have to address things with my own mom. So I couldn't sit there and photograph that without people like, trigger into photography. And so, whoa, someone, I love you. I love you with Timothy. It's adorable. But get out of my face with that shit. But now I've found I've actually been reaching out to people that I know have children and saying, can I photograph you together?
Right.
Because I've gone through a massive healing journey with that, and photographing women, especially with younger children, has been very therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
I get to give them this beautiful moment, and in the process, I get to see that bond. And even though it's something I know that I will never have directly, it still is healing and uplifting to me.
Yeah.
And so if you would have asked me 2 years ago if I would do it, I'd be like, oh, no. And here I am. And that's a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing to say, this no longer appeals to me, or this now appeals to me.
Sure.
And to move in that direction confidently. And to know that all things end. Relationships end. All of this ends. We are impermanent. And that's a big reminder, too. And I don't want to be macabre at all, but it's the memento mori aspect of it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Friends, and even people who are listening I don't like, I want you to know this, too. Like, we are going to die. We are not long for this world, and we do not know how much time we're going to have. You're like, oh, you want to spend these fleeting finite moments. Do you want to be fitting into a bubble so that, whatever Belinda thinks that you're great on social media, or so that for these petty validations? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I like being validated. My ego loves being validated, loves it. But literally, I ask myself that when I start getting into ruts, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be assumptive and say on January 1st, I'm going to die. I don't know how, but I'm going to die. How do I want to spend these next months with my art? What do I want to do? What do I want to say? And it's powerful.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not for everyone. Some people get into that spiral and they don't get out.
Sure.
But I think it's really important to realize, like, we are finite, and that things like legacy, ultimately, I know I'm probably going to get some hate mail for this, but legacy is illusory too. It's a way that we try and cope with mortality because it's another thing that we can't understand or comprehend. But 2 or 3 generations from now, even if you and I create the most impactful work of this generation, no one's going to know our name or know that work. And so we have to create for ourselves now. What's going to serve us now? What's going to bring us joy and peace now? What are we going to love now? What's going to make us fucking energized and excited and radiant in the here and now? And that doesn't have to be the same tomorrow or the next day or even in the next hour. but we meet ourselves where we're at. And if we can honor that, it is so wonderful and liberating.
I agree with you 100%. I think for me, it's less about the final product of what I produce.
Yep.
It's the feeling that I get, it's the vibe that I get, the emotional state that it puts me in,
Yep.
that I can then just connect with other people. They're around my positive energy.
Yep.
And so when I'm creating and it looks like dog shit, which often, let's call a spade, right? There's going to be one in there that is great. And whether it's self-portrait, whether it's a sunset, doesn't matter. Like, there's going to be something in there that you can look at and be like, that's great. And draw some inspiration from, draw some self-love from. That impacts everyone around you. But if you're constantly in the state of hating your work or in a place where you don't know what you want to say, it's frustrating and it's disempowering. And that just kind of makes you a big downer, right? So thinking about longevity, thinking about mortality does give you a different perspective on what's valuable.
Yeah.
What's important in your life. And it could be, well, if I only have to January, I got to make $1 million. Okay, well, if finances is your thing, go forth and conquer. If it's love, if it's eat all the French fries in the world, I don't know, like whatever it is that floats your boat, do it with a passion and energy of 1,000 suns, right? Because if you don't do that, then you're just in this sullen state of existence. And you're not able to bring what is uniquely you to other people. They don't have to like your art.
No.
But the emotional state that you're going to be in, creating what you love and feeling good about it, is going to translate to other people. And I think that is oftentimes what separates some of the greater artists from people that were probably technically better, but just didn't affect the people around them.
Oh,
or good people.
Very much. One of my favorite quotes, and I just butcher quotes. I love quotes, and I never get them right. And the paradox, but it's Richard Avalon. He's also a controversial figure, but he has this quote, and it's basically, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I hate the camera. It gets in the way of what I do.
Sure.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that. And like, if anyone has ever seen me work, and I have someone in front of my lens, I spend so much more time talking. I'm talking, I'm laughing, I'm talking shit, I'm telling stories, I'm poking fun, and then I'll pick up my camera for 20 frames and boom, 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 and then I put it back down because my real passion is the person in front of me. And that actually circles back to the monetary aspect of things, because one thing that I hear a lot, I'm sorry, photographers, but we are a whiny bunch. We love to whine, and I'm guilty of this as well. I'll drink to that. We love to whine. Well, Joe's headshot studio down the road is charging $100 less and they're booked out. Why is this and why is that? Why is this? Well, I get it. It sucks sometimes. You're putting your heart and soul into everything and you're spinning your wheels and you see someone else. You don't see them. You see your perception of them, but you perceive someone else in a way where you're like, well, they're not doing anything and they're getting all of this success. Going back to the experiential thing, some people are fucking amazing with people, but shitty photographers, and they're going to be really successful because people feel great around them, and there is inherently bias when we view images. If Matt, you photograph me tomorrow, we have a great experience, and you caught me where I have a triple chin because I'm back looking like Jabba the Hutt, and it's my crack, and I'm pirate-eyed because I drank too much bourbon before the session, but we laughed the whole time, and it was this beautiful expression of love and brotherhood. I'm going to look at those and go, fuck, man, like, let me give you some money for this.
Right.
What can I do for you for these? If you get beautiful statuesque photos of me, but the entire time you're telling me I'm a piece of shit and making me uncomfortable, and that's how we get there, I'm going to look at those photos, even though externally people would say they're wonderful, I'm going to go, those are shit.
Sure.
So someone's experience dictates how they perceive the images. And we lose sight of that too, because it's like, well, I have great lighting. Why am I not getting work? And it's because you don't talk to your clients. They come in and going back to portrait masters or conferences, so often what happens is someone gets in front of a model and they presume that the model loves themselves and the model doesn't need validation, and that they don't have to communicate. They shouldn't introduce themselves, and they just start clicking. And then the model's like, well, what do you like? Thank you so much. And that's it. And there's no interaction. There's no recognition. The second workshop that I did, I had a gentleman in here who was a beautiful man, beautiful, categorically, like really, really stunning man, really uniquely stunning. And
Model or
smile.
Okay.
And I walked out of the room. I was going to get water, self-care, because I was dehydrated and I was starting to look like a California raisin. I was getting that white stuff in the corner of my mouth.
Well, I grew up here.
Yeah. How much is I know? So I realized, I was like, oh, I'm like photosynthesizing. Like I need to, like, these trucks produce without. So I go in, I'm chugging water. I chug like 32 ounces of water, you know, airing on like hyponatremia and all this. My electrolytes are fucked up. And I come back out, and there's the paparazzi. They're literally in this part of the studio over here. And I mean, for those of you who are listening, I'm pointing to the left. But they're in the part of the studio, and everyone's photographing this gent, and no one's saying anything to him. And it was so fucking awkward. It's just shutters. Yeah, the shutters fucking clicking, and I know him. Right. I could tell he's uncomfortable, and no one knew this, but he had just gotten out of a relationship. He was cheated on. It was a bad situation. He almost didn't come, and I'm like, come if you want, don't come. Like, what? That's on you. And he showed up, and I walked over, and I literally stood in front of everyone. And I go, what the fuck are you doing? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, why are none of you talking to this man? Why are none of you telling him he's beautiful and he's wonderful? Why am I not hearing the yes? The fucking get it, you're stunning. And literally someone spoke up, and I'm happy that they did. I really appreciate their courage in that moment, because it's hard to speak up in a group situation. We're all like kids who get called on to read in class. But they're like, well, look, he's beautiful and he's amazing. Like, why would I need to say anything? I'm like, you don't fucking know that he knows that. You don't know anything that's going on in this human being's mind right now. You don't know where they're at. You don't know how they feel. You're being so presumptive and disrespectful to this person. This is not why we are fucking here. And there was a big pause.
I bet.
And I was like, oh, there's going to be a lot of people asking for refunds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but all of a sudden it changes. The behavior changes in the first person, and I'm not going to name her by name, but she's a dear friend of mine. She's like, oh my God, you're so gorgeous, baby. Yes. And all of a sudden you could feel it. Like I'm getting the hair standing up on my arms right now. There was an electricity in the air, and his demeanor changed.
Sure.
He grew 6 inches in height. He's smiling. He's laughing. And it was this really beautiful thing. And I'm so happy that happened, because that was one of the most profound teaching moments that I've had in these workshops, was to say, honor and respect and love the person in front of your lens. And as soon as we lose sight of that, we diminish, and we hollow, and we just take someone down. And I never, ever want to do that myself. I never want that to happen in the studio. And that is our superpower as photographers. We get to fucking lift people up.
Well, I think, you know, in that moment, you gave them permission to be excited about what they were doing, to take the chains off and not feel the pressure of getting a perfect picture of a perfect person. You gave them the ability to have fun.
Yeah.
And just be, and just create. And that energy transfer between them and the model, and then back and around, it changes everything, and it elevates everybody else's creativity, right? Because now it's less the piranhas, I call them. The piranhas coming in and just feeding, and then getting out. Now people are trying to do different things, supporting each other, and it creates a better community, you know, within just the 6, 8, 10 students that you have. I love seeing that dynamic happen. It takes a certain type of educator to move people in that direction. Yeah. And it also takes a certain amount of time. And sometimes you have that one, you know, that one smoke grenade in every class that is just going to just fuck everything up, no matter everybody else is cool. And then there's, him or her, right? And it can really take the whole vibe out of the class.
Yeah.
So it takes a certain type of educator to be able to realize all of these dynamics and adjust course accordingly.
Well, and I come back to Oklahoma as well. And when I say that, if the fair here, to talk about transparency, The workshops that I've held, they generally sell out fairly quickly, and I'm super grateful for that. But I curate these workshops. There are people who sign up for the workshops who I know, I wouldn't make a judgment call, but I know well enough where I won't let them into the workshop. And because I know that it's going to be just that, I know that they're going to come in with a certain energy and attitude, and it's going to take away from everyone's experience. And I value what I provide to the people who are there more than the dollars that could come in from another seat being filled. And I'm not saying this in an elitist way. I know that it can come off that way, but like I would rather eat ramen instead of ribeye if it means that I'm going to create an incredible experience for people. And so that's a point of integrity for me to say, like, I am not going to prioritize dollars over people, dollars over experience, dollars over connection. And that doesn't apply to everyone. I'm in a fortunate position where I can do that. I don't have kids to feed. I don't have any of these types of things. So like if you're out there and you're just take them as they come, that's cool. I get it. We all have different responsibilities and circumstances. But for me, it's a point of pride that I know that like I will turn down jobs with people who I consider ethically abysmal. I will keep people out. And I think that that's another thing that we sort of have to do as artists is because it is an expression of self, we have to curate that expression. We have to be sure that what we're saying and what we're doing and who we're working with aligns with our values insofar as we're able. Insofar as we're fortunate, or some of you would say privileged enough to do. I think that's a really important thing. And it's how I stay engaged with my art and with my business, even during slow times. And if I turn down a job, and a lot of you have heard this, and Stu has talked about this, the power it is incredible. If I have credit card debt piling up, and I'm looking at interest rates going, oh, I'm fucked. And a job comes to me and there's a lot of fucking zeros behind a number and I say no, even though I know that I'm going to be struggling and fucking on the pain train, there is a power in that that is unparalleled. And so that goes back, that's important to me. That's one of the things that's important to me as an artist. That's one of the points of fulfillment for me. That's on my list of foundational elements. And that's, again, why it's important to define these things and to decide what's important to us and where we want to be and what we want to do and what we want to say with our work and all of that.
How have you seen your alchemy workshops evolve over time? And do you feel like, we were talking at the very beginning of this, how much you pack into 2 days, right? You said overwhelming is the word you use, which, so suddenly the business guy in me is like, let's break that up into 4 modules, 4 different courses, elevator. So how have you seen it evolve to the point where you're able to give people the proper balance of the mental, the intellectual, the thoughtful approach to what you're doing, and then also the technical, and making sure that they're getting the entire experience, right? You want to curate a certain experience. So has there been anything that you've dropped? You're like, well, that was a bad idea.
I think for like the first 1 or 2 workshops that I ran, there was an asinine number of models I brought in. I think it was like 8 the first day and 10 the second. It was like a runaway ship. And in my mind, I was making up for my lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, if we have 10 people each day and they get to photograph 20 amazing,
distract them over here.
Man, even if I'm a atrocious piece of shit, they're going to have a great time. So I tried to do too much because it was masking my insecurity, my uncertainty as an educator. And also it was a counterpoint because I agree, there is probably a way to break this up. But what really gets me in the education sector is where it's like, come to my workshop. And then it's going to honor for the law, and they have a social technique, and they dip their toes into it, and they're like, well, to get the full picture, come back to my next one in 2 months. And you get the bait and switch. Especially as someone who like had gone to workshops when I didn't really have the means to do so, and made sacrifices to do it, and then have people hold things up to the top and withhold. I never wanted to do that. So I even start the workshop by going, I'm going to reveal everything. More than you want to know. Like, this is a full Monty of creativity. Like, you're going to learn all the tricks, all the secrets, all the fuck up, all the shortcuts and hacks that I take. That's a big thing, but I think I become much more certain in myself as an educator. So I'm much more involved in deconstructing my process. I think at first I was like, oh, here, let me just, Matt, you're my model, stand in front of there. Oh, cool. Look at this kind of like moody light. Oh, I took 3 photos. Who wants to photograph Matt? Or we go, me, 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 because there's a beautiful set and there's a beautiful human and there's beautiful lighting and everyone's fucking trigger happy on their cameras and they want to get into it. Now I'm much more focused on, hey, Matt, like, let's connect, let's talk a little bit. Well, here, like, I'm setting this light up on Matt. Like, this light looks cool right now, but man, I want you to turn your chin to the right a little. And actually, I'm using my 85 or my 35. I'll just switch to the 85 because I want something more intimate. And hey, Matt, remember earlier when we were in the back and we were styling you, we talked a little bit about that experience you went through recently. Can we go back into that? Can we just lean into that for a second? And all right, I like this frame a lot, but let's take a deep breath in. And actually, like, with what you're wearing, I don't really like this coat behind you. Let's put you on something that has a little bit more contrast. And I lead into my process more because I think I appreciate to a greater degree why people are here. And it's because they want to learn why I do what I do and how I do what I do. And I want to give that to them. So as I become more confident in myself, I've become more confident in the fact that people are here for me. They're not here for the 75 backdrops that I have. They're not here for the, I don't even know how many lights. It's gross. There's so many damn lights in this place. They're not here for the lights. They're not here for the extraordinary human beings to be able to work with. They're here because there are things about my work that they admire or that resonate with them, and they want to learn about my process. And so as I found grounding and certainty as an educator, I become more comfortable with leaning into that process and narrating it and deconstructing it and sharing it. And that's vulnerable. This is my heart. This is my soul. This is my life. People are like, what do you do? I'm like this. What else do you do? Nothing. Nothing. I occasionally, twice a year, get to hang out with a friend, drink some bourbon. This is everything. This consumes my every waking moment. And so being able to open myself up to that, and I'm so grateful to my students, the students who were there for the first workshop and the second workshop and the third and the fourth. And just as much as I've been part of their journey, they've been part of my own. And I don't think that what I do now is better. I think what I do now is different. And I think it's more authentic. And I think that's really important because I preach authenticity. And so I feel like I have to live authenticity, right? Like there's so much of that in this industry too, where someone's like, well, honor the person in front of your camera, and they objectify the people in front of their camera. There's so many people who are like, don't just chase dollars, and all they do is chase dollars. There's so much hypocrisy and two-facedness, and I do not want to be an agent of that bullshit.
Believe me, we could talk for at least through the rest of the Woodford, probably into the bullet, about hypocrisy, just in general. But I want to come back to something you said, and we'll keep it a bit more positive. Connection being your thing. That's mine as well, at least in my type of photography where I am. Culturally, people aren't used to being in front of cameras.
Yeah.
The backwoods of Maine is not the fashion mecca of the Western world, right? And there are typically times that you get a photographer for a wedding, maybe for the birth of a child. That's about it, right? And hopefully in the subsequent years, you come up with something that you can cut your face out and use as your obituary photo, right? That's where I'm located. So culturally, getting in front of the camera is a very nerve-wracking thing. It's nerve-wracking for anybody, regardless of where you are. But photography and portrait photography, high-end portrait photography, connected photography, authentic, soulful photography is not something that is regular in that area, right? So trying to bring that in, I focus my entire business on the connection with the client, right? Having hours of conversation with them before I even press the shutter once, through consultations, through just conversations on the phone, getting to understand how they work, what their problems are, what their concerns are, what their loves are, what do they get excited about, right? All of those things by being curious. And I think that is the nature of true connection, is curiosity. I've seen you in the few places that we've gone around here over the time that we've been together, people know you, people dig you. You're not friends with them, but you're familiar with them. You are connected with them in a certain way, even if it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm here every Thursday night to get wings or, whatever. You're creating a connection with these people. So it is something you do all the time. You're not necessarily unrecognizable, not because of what you do, but so it's a thing. So there is that, but you also disarm people with sincerity and with your ability to connect with them. Much different from what they may judge or perceive you to be. How have you been able to teach that connection to others, or the importance of that connection to others? Because if it's intrinsic in you, right, you're not really thinking about it. It's just how you deal with humanity. But it's such an important part of your process. How do you teach that, or at least try to explain it?
And no, it's Carol, first and foremost. It's absolutely a challenge. And it's one of those things like, if you look at my workshop page, there's a bit about communication. But going back to soft skills, it's not mathematics. It's not a lighting formula. It's not a meter. Like, how do we get to that? And for me, the biggest thing is disarming this notion of having to come across as being infallible. So I think as a photographer, we take on this overly demonished role of having to be perfect.
Right.
I have to show up and I'm an authority figure and they have to respect me and I know what I'm doing and they look to me and I'm a trusted person. And there's all of this.
What's the fear of being embarrassed?
Exactly.
Right?
That's what it is. And we all have that. This goes back to childhood as well. You know, you step up to speak in front of class and you say, and then everybody goes, and then you're talking to your therapist about it and you're like, that shit. So I like to play on the idea of unique is our humanness, and our humanness is brokenness. It's fucked up in this. It's being embarrassed. It's making fucking mistakes. And so it's a really silly thing. I always talk about this. If I have someone in front of my camera who's like, and they're not comfortable, it's hard. It's scary being in front of the fucking camera. Like, I think that's why it's important for us as photographers to be photographed, because we realize, holy shit, there's a light on me and someone has a camera on me, and I didn't see the photo of myself in half a decade. And what the fuck do I look like? And oh shit. It's a crazy thing. So, I mean, I like to lean into fuck-ups and making mistakes. And that's what I try and like teach or speak to in workshops. Like, if I get someone in who's really uncomfortable, let's say I'm feathering into my computer because they're a headshot client, I'll take a couple of photos with my lens cap on purposely. And I'll go, I don't know what's going on with my camera. I don't know. And they're like, oh, Jonny, your lens cap is on. I'm like, oh, shit, are you serious? I'm like, wow, you probably regret paying me money, don't you? I really know what I'm doing. And I laugh at myself, and in that moment, the dynamic changes. Because there's no longer a hierarchy. I'm not up here looking down at them. We're right here looking at each other. Because I humanize myself. So as soon as we realize that, like, what makes us human are the things that we avoid or try and avoid sharing, we become more connected immediately. And I literally love to learn about people, and that's something you can't teach. And I'm like, if you don't care about people, if you don't want to know someone's story, get the fuck out of portrait photography. Like, sorry, not sorry. You don't belong here. It's not good for the people you photograph. It's not good for the fucking industry. If you don't love people and want to know their stories and want to know what makes them tick and what makes them them and who they are and where they've been and where they want to go, you don't belong here. And I always talk about inclusivity, but in this case, I am going to be exclusionary. This isn't for you. Find something else. Take photos of sunsets or cigarette butts or make kind of get too. But
body of work, right? Create a big body of work.
But about that, like, there's always going to be commonality. And I think what you said is something interesting, you know, having these tattoos, and obviously, like, I'm dressed up like this, and it gives a certain perception. But if I walk in and I have a Slayer t-shirt on, and I have a giant full nose ring in, and, you know, like, I just had dental work done, and I'm bleeding out of the corner of my mouth, and someone's like, oh, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, by the way,
would you like to come in and get your portrait taken?
I'm going to create a dress on you. Watch this quote. fraction of that disarms people,
Right.
because they have a presupposition about who I am and what I am. And as soon as that's challenged, it's almost like the fainting goat mentality where they just go, oh, they become receptive. So I think that's a really wonderful thing. And also, speaking to style, like, you don't have to dress in floral pants and a floral shirt and have, floral tattoos and a flower in your pocket, though I do, and floral stuff.
I almost wore that up.
I bet you did. You look grateful. But I dress up like this every day, especially for clients. Literally one of my favorite things.
There's a level of respect. Yeah.
Fucking exactly. I walk in and, hey, to those of you who are wearing sweatpants and Crocs out there, if that's your vibe, I'm not going to knock it too much. But when a client comes in and they're like, oh my God, they're dressed up so nicely, for what? I'm like, for you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I respect you. This is an amazing opportunity. I love the fact that you trust me. I'm going to honor that, and I'm going to do my very best for you. And they're like, wow, like, I'm not here serving them. He's here serving me. And it switches that around. So I lean into that of being respectful, being serious, being a little creative. I could Sontag, look at quotable quotes on it. But Susan Sontag has a quote that's basically like, I was never afraid to fall in love with the people in front of my camera. And there's that microcosm, whether it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 4 hours, where I literally become infatuated with the person in front of me. And it's not saccharine. It's not artificial. I want to know. I want to walk away after that period of time and have as much information as possible. I want to be able to call them up a month later and be like, hey, now that you're down in Tampa, St. Pete, how's that treating you? Also, would you please select your fucking images because it's for the month? And it's your parents getting insane.
No, Jerry Guionis was just like, I fall in love with my clients. I just have to fall out of love with them before I go home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it really struck me because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But you bring it back to, you were talking about, dressing up for your clients. And, I know you're not putting on a show for them, but it's like showing them the proper amount of respect. You're obviously going to be spending a considerable amount of money with me. Let me show you the respect of showing up. It's something that honors you as well. The part of that that's gotten lost over the years is the professionalism part of it. Yeah. And I think, we talked about it really early on in this conversation about the barrier to entry being low, and the standards of professionalism have also dropped to a degree. And not so much that people aren't producing professional work or they're saying things that are inappropriate. It's just a level of formality. People used to dress up to go on planes.
I was literally just going to bring up travel.
Right. So flying out here today, and I'm sitting in first class only because I got complimentary upgrade, only because there was like no one else on the fucking plane. So it has nothing to do with me. But I'm sitting there and I'm literally dressed like this. This is the clothes I had on the plane. And jean jacket, black t-shirt, black pants, and cowboy boots. Not informal, not formal. I'd say of the whatever there were 10 seats in first class, this was the best dressed.
Yep.
And I'm not well dressed, but I like to do that when I travel. Yep. I feel better. I don't want to be in sweats and a tank top and a neck pillow and carrying my security blanket. And like I see a lot of adults doing, it's really kind of weird. But I think in what we do as a profession, that informality has degraded what the client expects.
Yeah, very much so.
And it's very hard when I see online. Now, the product I'm sure is beautiful. They could have great connection with their clients. But when I see a behind the scenes video of someone that is dressed far too informally, I don't care how good your work is, it says something about how you feel about your clients. Yeah. Now that's going to get me the hate mail.
Oh yeah, no, we're both going to get some shit on that.
But I think there is a level of respect that you have to have for whatever industry that you're in, whatever client. If you're in the service industry, if you are providing products and services for people, there's a standard that I feel needs to be maintained.
Agreed. Absolutely.
I don't know where we lost that. Maybe it was COVID and we were all in pajama bottoms, but
I was still dressed like this.
but yeah, you're still just, I got a onesie with a hat. But I think, we've lost that formality.
Yeah.
And it's not for the better. And I know I sound like the old guy shaking my hand at the clouds, but there's nothing wrong with bringing back that little bit of class, that little bit of formality.
I agree. And going back to, like, I do the same thing, having those hours of conversation before you even click the shutter. Like, I get to know someone, and if I find out that someone loves Yo-Yo Ma and loves cello music and they're really into the scent of sage, guess what I'm going to do before they show up? I'm going to make sure Yo-Yo Ma's playing. I'm going to sage the studio or bring Palo Santo in or an analog scent. I'm going to do all of those things. So they come in and they smell it. And what that says is, I listen to what you have to say. I respect you. I appreciate you. And it's a relationship, right? Like, if you're starting to date, I don't even know if dating still exists.
I gave up on that years ago.
But if you're doing that and you're like, oh, my favorite thing in the world is going to amusement parks and clowns, and this person whom you're intrigued by shows up dressed as a fucking clown and takes you to the amusement park, holy shit. Like, they actively listen to what you have to say. Now, I hate clowns. I love amusement parks.
I love me a juggalo.
Yeah, well, I see people. But I mean, if someone does that, there's so much respect. And I dress, I think this is worth noting too, I dress relative to client aesthetic.
Sure.
Like, I just shot a music video for a friend's son, and he's an amazing, like, burgeoning artist. And it's like EDM, and it's kind of like hardcore mumble rap. Like, I didn't dress the way I'm dressed today. I was like in all black, but it was still fresh. It was my thing.
Sure.
I had checkerboard socks, but, like, it's the same thing. I'm going to take into consideration what they're into. If they say their favorite color is blue, I'm going to fucking wear blue. And they walk in and they're like, holy shit, Yo-Yo Ma's playing and you're in a blue suit and there's stage in the air. Wow. And they feel valued. They feel appreciated. They feel loved. They feel respected. And for some people, regardless of where they're at in their life, that's the first time they've felt those things in a really long fucking time. And if you want to talk about setting a precedent for someone to sit down in front of the camera and be vulnerable with you and be open and receptive to you and give themselves in those moments to you, that's a beautiful way to do it. But if someone comes in who loves cello and they love blue, and I'm wearing fucking green and I'm playing death metal, and they say they hate the smell of baked cookies, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I love cookies, and I'm baking them in the studio and munching them, I'm like, you said you love pastels, get on that fucking primary red and let's go. And then my reasoning behind it is that I'm an uncompromising artist? No, I'm a fucking asshole. That's inconsiderate. And I don't value the person in front of me, and I don't value their time and their humanity and their money, and there's no excuse for that shit. So it goes back to honoring and respecting the person in front of your lens, whether they're paying you or not. And I treat everybody the same. I think that's another big thing. I've seen that happen with photographers. I've been lucky to be an assistant to some really talented photographers. I've been unlucky enough to be an assistant to some really shitty photographers. And not in terms of their work. Their work was great, but in terms of who they were as people. You know, and someone comes in and they mill them and they diminish them and they treat them poorly and it changes it. So yeah, like it's an honor, and with it being an honor, it's a responsibility. We have a responsibility to do our very best for the people in front of us. And I also think that I'm in a different position than most people because photography saved my life. Like, I was in a horrible place probably 8 years ago when I picked up a camera again. I was fucking going through intense withdrawals. I was fucking suicidal. I was depressed. I didn't leave my house for 2 months. Like, I was in bad shape. It was one of the lowest points of my life. I got a camera as a means to try and reconnect with myself. I still remember getting it. I still remember finally going outside, and I lost like 30 pounds. I looked like a fucking scene from Train Spotting. I walk across the street, and there's this fucking lake, and I'm shaking because I had agoraphobia and severe anxiety. And I'm hiding behind my camera, and it allowed me to go out. And then I walk across the street to the park, and there's this beautiful crimson red sunset. It's reflecting off this glassy lake. Like, I can feel the grass under my feet and smell the air and hear the birds. And I sat down, and there's people around me, and it was so weird being among people, and there's families laughing, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And it was like offensive. And I take this.
Oh, the loving relationship.
Yeah, I know. Oh, that's weird. That's fucking weird. But I take this photo of this sunset, and it was with a Pentax A3, this little crop sensor camera, and a little nifty 50 on it. And I looked at it and I just started fucking crying. And I just started laughing and then I started crying and I'm laying in the grass. I was a crazy person. I looked like a fucking crazy person. They definitely took the kids off the playground and went away immediately and called authorities because I seemed so out of my fucking gourd. But for 3 months, I felt like I was drowning. And in that moment, I was able to take a full fucking breath. It saved my life. Literally, I would have died or killed myself. And I'm sorry if that's triggering for any of you, but that's my fucking story.
Sure.
And I have to own that for me. And so that's how I honor this craft. This craft saved my life. It gave me a life. It gave me purpose. It gave me place. It gave me friends. It gave me love. It gave me family. It gave me fucking fulfillment. That's how I honor it every day. When I see someone shitting on it, when I see someone using it as a cheap means to fucking make a quick buck, when I see someone exploiting people with it and through it, it makes me sick. I love this so much. This is an extension of who I am, and I honor it. And no, you don't need to have this level of relationship, but understand the power that you wield and what you can do with that power and honor that. Honor yourself, honor your camera, honor the person in front of your camera or the people. And if you do that, if you give yourself to it from that point of view, I fucking guarantee you're going to love what you create and you're going to make fucking money and you're going to find success. But give yourself to it and fucking be passionate. And if you're not, you can put down your camera and that's okay. You know, but just really respect it. I think that's what it comes down to for me for so much of this. I talk with friends all the time and it's just in the world. I'm like, we don't have to love each other. We don't have to like each other, but respect it. Like respect the medium, respect the artists in this medium, respect the lineage of how we got here, respect the Peter Lindberghs and the Irving Penns and the Sarah Moons and all of these wonderful fucking photographers. Respect your colleagues, respect your clients. Respect your uncle who sat in front of you so you could test outside life. Operate and create from a place of love and respect, and these other things will fall into place, and you'll find your voice, and you'll find your fucking art, and you'll find your method, and you'll find your peace. But give yourself to it, and it will give back more than you could ever fucking imagine. But it all starts there, and without that, there is only without.
So I'm going to land the plane right there. I think that was a perfect way to end. Man, thank you for letting me do this. I'm so excited for this workshop. I can't tell you what it means for me to be here and steal everything from you. And you said you had 75 lights. I only counted 73.
I'm a liar.
And I've got 2 in my bag. Thank you.
Do you? Art, photography, it's all of us. So what we can do, I mean, we literally transform lives. We change lives, we change people's perceptions of self. Or if nothing else, we just allow people for a moment to feel seen in a world that does not see people. And that's really fucking amazing. So do you find your voice, speak from your fucking voice, learn, love, fuck up, fail, make a mess of it all, and then make sense of that fucking mess, and then throw it all away and do it again. Because that's what this is all about. And hopefully you get to do something really incredible before, you bite the dust. That's what we're all trying for. So yeah, it's been great. And yeah, if you want to send hate mail, it's info@Jonny.
I thought you were going to be Matt at Stone Tree Creative.
I will respond. I will be very passive aggressively, and I don't have anything better to do with my time at life, so let's fuck it up.
Thank you, my friend.
Cheers.
Okay,
pleasure. And novel.